Yep. All right, everyone, let's get started. I'm going to have a short meeting for you tonight. It's going to be a short meeting, yeah. At this time, would you please all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ms. Garcia, would you take the roll, please?
Eva Henry, Steve Odorizio, Jeff Baker, Elise Jones, David Beacom, Randy Wheelock, George Marlin, Nicholas Williams, Kevin Flynn, Roger Partridge, Ron Engels, Libby Zabo, Bob Pfeiffer, Bob Roth, Larry Vidham, David Spellman, Aaron Brockett, Margot Ramsden, Lynn Baca, Matt Johnston, Roger Hudson, Ben Price, George Teal, Tammy Maurer, Jeremy Fay, Katie Brown, Richard Champion, Gail Christie, Rick Teeter, Jackie Thomas, Catherine Whitman, Steve Conklin, Linda Olson, Cheryl Wink, where she was, Bill Gipp, Daniel Dick, Carolyn Sharp, Drew Peterson, Bobby Sindelar, Lisa Jones, Laura Brown, Lynette Kelsey, Scott Norquist, Storm Glore, Jim Dale, Ron Rakowski, George Lance, Mike Hillman, Stephanie Walton, Christine Berg, Dana Goodwine, Isaac Levy, Karina Elrod, Kyle Schlachter, Larry Strock, Win Shaw, Joan Peck, Marcia Martin, Ashley Stolzman, Connie Sullivan, Barney Drystat, Joyce Palazewski, Paul Sutton, Chris Larson, Julie Mullica, John Dyack, Sally Daigle, Andy Hammerly, Jessica Sandgren, Jackie Phillips, Herb Atchison,
Here.
Bud Starker, Adam Zarin, Deborah Perkins Smith, Bill Van Meter. Have a quorum.
Have a quorum, okay. If I call out your name, would you please stand where you're at? Katie Brown. Katie is the new member of Cherry Hills Village. Russell Stewart. Is Russell here? No. Not here, all right. Jackie Thomas. Not here. Kevin Forget. Not here, all right. I know this one is. Colleen Whitlow. Nice to have Colleen back. She's the new alternate for the town of Meade. And then John Bowles. John is the new alternate for the city of Westminster. So we thank and welcome all of our new members. Next item up is a roll call, is a move to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to move for the agenda? So moved. I have a motion. Is there a second? I have a motion second. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. All right, what we're going to do on this next one, on the regional transportation piece, what we were asked to do is bring in what was discussed at the Metro Mayor's retreat. I'm going to go through the slides that were accompanied there to give you an idea of, from the Metro Mayor standpoint, where we're at. And the reason that we're bringing this is that if you recall at the last board meeting, we talked a little bit about having staff go through and start to look at the legal potentials of Metro Mayor's and DRCOG taking over some of this as an action item. So we'll explain that as we go through the slides. All right, so we're going to change it around. Chuck's going to run the slides. I'm going to try to give you an overview. So at the Metro Mayor's Retreat last month, this is kind of what we came up with. This is what we presented. Mark Williams from the Transportation Committee for Metro Mayors is the chair. He's not able to be here tonight, so he asked if I'd fill in for him. So what we have is, go ahead, Chuck. This is kind of a history of where we started. In 2012, Don Hunt, so a lot of you remember him, he's the former director of CDOT, and Rick Pilgrim, sorry, one of the former mayors, helped to convene a regional funding dialogue, and this included the Metro Mayor's Caucus, county commissioners, and a large group of stakeholders from statewide. So this was one of the first times we had a statewide coalition that started to talk about transportation needs. The goal was to identify a regional funding strategy, and it resulted in bringing up of a straw man and what's called a Metro Transit District, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And in 2013, we agreed to try to fund statewide for the first time, and this resulted in the Metro Mayor's Caucus convening what was called at that time Impact 64. The 64 accounts for all 64 counties in the state, and we had representation and participation from all 64 counties in this. The part of why we were trying to find funding was that the state needed a comprehensive, safe, and efficient transportation system, which we still believe is an issue with us today. Metro region has a tax base to address the need, but fewer other regions do. If you think about what we put into transportation, about over 60% of the funds come from the metro area. Metro has 50% of the population, so metro funding passage may jeopardize support for statewide ask. And that's why we were trying to stay as a group to work on a statewide resolution to this. So the ask, based upon Prop 110, this is how the results came out. And many of you remember we had a lot of discussion between 109 and 110 here at the board and supporting these measures. So the yes vote was 40.2% and the no vote was 59.8%, and here's how it kind of breaks down with the yes and no. It only passed in 2 counties, being Denver and Boulder. January, in the current situation, we continued to see the needs and the shortfalls continuing to grow. No resolution of funding, nothing in the budget that was passed from the state budget that really increased funding. County funding discussions spurred the fear of a regional fracture. This is where we'll talk about RTAs in a little bit. State infrastructure funding, there weren't really new options on the table. Since we couldn't get anybody to vote to take it out of the general fund and we couldn't get a tax measure passed, where were you going to get money? We're back to SB1 that we've talked about a number of times. There is a referred measure in SB1 that the legislature has to deal with this session. Otherwise, they have to put a referred measure on the ballot in 2019 for bonding. Now, revisiting the regional mobility funding, we were looking at how do we accelerate regional and local mobility priorities in all forms of mobility. Looking for collaboration, not competition with the state. Need to reduce the initial size of any CDOT legislative solution. Find more models from other regions and partner with CDOT, RTD, and others trying to get to a resolution. So part of the discussion that took place at Metro Mayor's, if you look at the regional sales tax, recall we had originally talked about a 1/4 cent, a 1/2 cent, and when we did 1242 several years ago, the decision was to go to 0.62. That's what the majority of this group voted on as well. Metro Mayors did the same thing, and the statewide coalition did the same thing. So with 110, we went forward with the 0.62. If you take the state out of it and you only look at the region, if the region had passed a 1/2 cent sales tax, we would have ended up with more money for the region than if it had passed the 0.62. That's people to share, but it doesn't evolve into a statewide resolution of transportation problems. So the Metro Mayors has put forward 3 potential discussion points. An RTA, which we've discussed here a few times, the Regional Transportation Authority, which today in Colorado there exists 6. Metro Transportation Collaborative, which would be basically an opinion of another DRCOG, but only in the region here. The other was empower an existing body that doesn't have taxing authority today, and what would that be? Before we talked to the board at the last session about having our staff look at what is that possibility for DRCOG? What would it take and how we do it? So staff is still pursuing that avenue and will report back to us when they've got a good answer. Now, in the RTA pros and cons, as it's stated, it's already in state statute and it's been well tested. There are 7 RTAs operating in the state because we had one formed between Denver and Adams County recently. Pikes Peak RTA is similar but smaller. The cons was it's a statute designed for small collaboration. IGA among up to 60 jurisdictions would seem to be insurmountable because everybody has to agree to the same IGA. Holdout would make a corridor investment difficult. If somebody decided within their city they didn't want it and they were in the middle of a hub, then you've got that big hole that you have no way to deal with. You have to work around them. But yet they benefit from all the work around them and don't have to put anything into it. Big board on this one is 1 rep for every participant. So if you had 60 jurisdictions, you've got a board that's bigger than DRCOG today. You look at the Metro Transit Coalition, the pros on that was governance can be refined in the legislation to meet our requirements. There's no need for the IGAs, and contiguity and continuity are assured because it's legislated. Cons, it requires legislative action, and some of the concerns, it's another new layer of government. Look at the EEB. There's no new level of government, no formation cost, and depending upon which one you look at, and there were only 2 recommended, DRCOG being one, RTD was the other one discussed, but was dismissed. I'll explain a little bit more. The part that the DRCOG brings is the experience already in dealing with construction dollars for roadway construction, multimodal, and we already have the basis of the organization here. What we don't have today is taxing authority. The other part of that was, or at least our friends from RTD brought a lot of political baggage with it that we didn't think we could overcome and get votes in the voters or support from the legislature to put that in there. It's not really their charter to be building roadways. Theirs is transportation and transit, but not highways and bridges and stuff like that. The discussion was on a regional, what do we want? First, we want a pathway for new and existing funding. We want governance that size and has a composition that meets the needs of the group. We want to be able to determine what project types and how the modal splits are determined. We want a pass through or a build and maintain option. Project selection process has to be defined. This is part of the concern of any of these is how do you set up the governance? How's the selection? Who's on the governance? Who helps make the decisions? On the state, was asking then, what other options do we have for additional funding? Autonomous vehicle fee, VMTs, vehicle miles travel fee, alternative fuels fee, and dedicated online sales tax to transportation, none of which exists today. So again, another opportunity for us to be working with the legislature. But from a regional basis, the path is we're going to continue to explore the empowering of DRCOG through the EEC. Governance needs to be nimble and responsive and representative. That has to be worked out if this goes forward. Keep in mind, this is only an exploratory piece right now. There is no decision made. There's no direction being asked of this board. This is strictly an informational item. What can we support from the Metro Mayors? We think that all of these things can be supported if we can figure out some of the simple things like governance. And we get down from a 60-member board to a 15-member board, some magic number that everybody agrees to that this is a representative group and they're the ones that make decisions and they bring it back with concurrence to the bigger board But it can't be they get back to the bigger board and everybody gets parochial, because then we're going to get nothing. Regional funding as a complement, not a replacement for new or existing state revenues. This would be a separate item. So if we continue to get anything through SB1 or the 267 funds, that would not be affected. This would be new dollars for transportation. And from the Metro Mayor standpoint, we still think this has to be multimodal. It can't be just roads. But I would tell you that's gone on to this, there have been some opening conversations between DRCOG, Metro Mayors, and the counties in the understanding, can we start to talk about groups working together to find resolution to this? Like, again, it's an opening conversation. I think we've had 2 conversations. We hope to have some more in the future. Nothing is set. But for the members of this group, part of our charter is to deal with transportation. Right now, from a statewide basis, we can't get there. From a regional basis, we're not getting there. And what we're down to is, what are we doing as individual counties or municipalities? We can't fix that on an individual basis. We have to find a way to be collaborative and work together as an entire group to have something. The governor's task force that he started, we've had 2 meetings now. He is doing the same thing, but he has combined education and transportation together in the task force, which we know are at times on the ballot are very competing measures. Typically, if you go for one, you end up losing the other one. These conversations are going to be back to us as a group in the future. We will be asked to take a position at some point in the future when there's more information available, and when staff has something through these collaborative groups that are talking to each other, what are the things that we could recommend to this group to discuss and consider? This is not going to go away. We fully expect that the legislature will amend SB1 to take the force measure off, because if you're already disapproved one that says no tax and one that says tax, why would you take it to the ballot again the following year? We're hoping that we're going to get that move. We believe it'll come forward as probably a late bill. We'll ask our lobbyists and stuff to keep an eye on it down there for us. As soon as that comes, we'll let everybody know that it's there. But it depends on how they're going to do it. 267 won't be affected, but it will be whether or not they go forward with the bonding issue. And that would be the only part that I'm aware of at this point that would be in the referred measure. Doug, do you have anything on that?
Sir, thank you very much for that summary of the Metro Mayor's retreat. Just a few things. We're all struggling with mobility issues within the, and certainly within the state as well. You know, and when Metro Mayor's staff reached out to us a couple months ago about the conversation, when 110 failed, which was all disappointing to many of us, we really, you know, as the slide suggests, Metro Mayor's has been having a conversation about regional funding opportunities for many years now. I think they feel that the time is ripe to that conversation. I don't know why. This is driving me nuts. Well, press conference. No, that when they reached out, was we feel the time is ripe to have that conversation. We do appreciate them reaching out to us and have that conversation. I will say that we're in nothing but exploratory phase right now. All 3 options are viable. We believe, even with conversations with our legal counsel about providing DRCOG with taxing authority, is viable. Whether it's the most acceptable avenue to go, this board will determine that at a later date. I will say that, as the chairman suggested, you know, when the initial conversations we're having with Metro Mayors, it was all about, you know, is there anything we could do in this current legislative session to create a vehicle or an instrument for some future initiative? There is no suggestion of going out in 2019. 2020, of course, would probably be the earliest possible time for that. The other part of the conversation that Metro Mayors had was a necessity to provide a more comprehensive education to the public about where transportation dollars go and how much infrastructure costs in this day and age. As you all know, we haven't had a salary increase as far as fuel tax since 1992 or 93. And I like to see, anybody who can run their household on what they made back in 1992. It's not practical. And to a person, Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, but they all agreed the necessity to do a full-blown campaign, education campaign, prior to any suggestions of actually filing a title or anything like that. So I think what we're really looking for from you all tonight is just first, we thought it important to share this information, what we have to date with you all, but just a heading on that you're okay with us continuing to explore this. It's going to take some time to work through this stuff, whether we can get to something late in the session and file a late bill. The session might be a little long in the tooth by the time we get to that point. But we'll continue to press on with as long as you guys concur.
And to kind of follow with Doug, I think from the discussions we've had with the governor trying to get through this is 2019 is a no-go. More than likely, 2020 will be a year of information. Probably see a bill in 21. And the reason what we're doing is I ask you to think about one of the things that you saw a lot of advertisement on last year before the ballot. You talked about open space, flooding on the Platte, all the neat trails and stuff. That was $1 million effort for urban drainage. De-Bruce. No new tax, just a de-Bruce. Got through it. And that's the kind of information thing that we think we're going to have to do to sell anything to the state at any level on transportation. Just can't get there without educating them and getting a group of people behind us. And recall, because we had to petition on the ballot for 109 and 110, by the time you get the petitioning approved, you get out and get your signatures and stuff, you're so late in the game that there is not a time to do informational stuff. We still spent over $5 million trying to get 110 on the ballot. Can't keep doing that. That happened with 1242, turned around and happened with 110, and neither of them got anywhere. So that's kind of the thing we're facing. But as Doug said, what I'm asking for you tonight is to authorize the staff to continue to work on this, to get us the information we need to make a decision, and they'll be back when that is ready. We're not putting a timeline on it because we need to make sure that what we have is something that we can bring back to the full board and then ask for your guidance on either moving forward or dropping it. Jones? Go ahead. I took his mic away from him. So
No, just real quick, and just to add on to that, so the couple of informal conversations we've had with Metro mayors has been with their executive committee staff and has been our executive committee and county representation as well, because that, of course, the missing ingredients with Metro mayors. Actually, as it stood at the time, might change here shortly, we didn't have any counties on our executive committee. So we invited the counties to participate in that.
Ms. Jones.
So I was just going to say, I for one am happy for DRCOG to continue this conversation. I think we all owe it to ourselves to be a part of all conversations right now to figure out this conundrum of how do we achieve greater investment in our transportation system in Colorado. And I guess one thing that I would like you to carry forward in the conversation is I think that a lot of local jurisdictions, I can speak for Boulder County, but I think everybody else is having the same conversation. Since it didn't work statewide, do we start looking regionally or do we start looking locally? And what can we accomplish locally? And I know for Boulder County, we already have a transportation sales tax. It's going to come up for renewal in 2024, and we're looking at increasing that. And we know what we would get from that. We would be able to spend it on our priorities. And so we're at this point, we wanted to be a team player and look statewide, but we're also going to be measuring any proposals based on, well, at what point does it make sense for folks to go it alone? So I just am being transparent about that, and I don't think we're the only jurisdiction having that conversation. What will be really important, and I guess I just want to highlight that Denver and Boulder County, as you noted, were the only two counties in the metro area that voted for 110. Our voters in Boulder County think that transportation is a priority and we're willing to invest in it. But a key piece of that for us is certainly a good portion of it coming back to the local governments, and also that it must be multimodal. If it's not multimodal, then we probably would go it alone. So I just wanted to put those values out there.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
My head goes to lots of details, so that must mean I agree with this, so that's all I'll say about that. But I also think that it occurs to me on just a handful of conversations about an RTA possibility that it would be, I think, beneficial for the RTA conversations to continue happening in parallel. I think it's sort of a fact, it's still, everybody's sort of in fact finding, and so I think that should continue to be encouraged.
We're not discouraging conversation on any of these, and especially at the local level. And look, there's groups of us right now are trying to figure this out, and we're looking for options. And if we can't get through this in some form or fashion that's either on a metro-wide area or on a statewide area, to Boulder County's point, we're going local. We have got to do something, but we can't not do something in the future. From the Westminster standpoint, we know we have roads to fix. And I've got 3 state highways in my city that I need to get fixed as well. And it's got to happen, but how do we do it? If we end up going in a patchwork, fixing little pieces here and there, we're not resolving the problem. Because transportation, even though over 80% of the roads that you travel on a daily basis are your local roads, we still can't keep up with the cost of doing them in our own cities. It's just not cheap doing roadway repairs. Mr. Brockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also supportive of DRCOG moving forward on these things. Just one of the things I'd like to see us look into and support is the possibility of changing the RTA rules, because I think that's a potential valid path for us to go down, but the current rules are very unwieldy, and I know there's talk about maybe making those a little bit more manageable. I'd hope that'd be part of what we might advocate for, is a form of those rules to make.
I think your point's valid, because it is one of the pieces that the group that's trying to have some level of conversation we're already having, that is, what do we need to do, if anything, and how do we amend them? Because one of the things, there's a little bit of a roadblock in that you've got to get the approval of the existing RTAs, and I believe CDOT has to also sign off on any changes to the RTA. I'm not 100% sure on that one. We had some discussion around it, but Metro Mayors is taking more of an immediate move. We're just tired of waiting, but we're trying to bring DRCOG as a group because it expands our reach a lot more than just the Metro Mayors. Bill, then I'll come back to you, Tammy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we do need to start looking at the solutions. Elise, you guys aren't the only ones looking at solutions at a local level. We're even talking about it at a municipal level of what we may do, and not a lot of those things that we would need to do are exactly palatable. We're not sure anybody's a fan of. So no, let's look at the options. Let's give ourselves an opportunity to discuss it as a board. Let's figure out where we do find consensus and meet up, and where we won't. And, we're supposed to be finding solutions. Let's keep looking for the solutions. Find them, good. If we don't find them, well, someone will.
Ms. Mauer?
If the board, sounds like what I'm hearing so far, everybody's okay with forward. But if we choose to go that, what kind of timeline are you looking at? Saying that 2021 would be education piece.
Based on the discussion we've had with the governor's group, that's the date that they're kind of kicking out. If we had to go to the ballot, that would probably be the ideal time. 2020 would be that campaign year. Try to put out information to try to educate the voters on what's needed and why and where. We don't have one at this point, because we don't, that group from the governor's task force won't finish meeting until June. But right now we're on no timelines. I don't want to get anybody confused. We're not set to anything other than we really need to make sure that DRCOG has a chance to look at the options available to us, especially if we have to go to the legislature. We may not have a decision for the board to make in this legislative session, so that means we don't do anything until 20. Just, we want to make a good sound decision before we move forward. We don't want to go in and then have to back up and start over again. Other comments? Roger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, I think it's a very worthy conversation. But I think what we really have to do is impress upon our state legislature some way to fund CDOT. And I say that because right now, if you're going to go lobby your federal delegation or the federal transportation, you need a partner. And if CDOT doesn't have the money, it doesn't matter how much we have locally on a state road, we don't have CDOT as a partner, we're not going to get support. So I would say go forward, but I think we really have to give that strong message to the state legislature and the governor that they need to fund CDOT.
Mr. Teeter?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple comments. Commerce City had to go to a 1 cent sales tax to manufacture the turning Highway 2 and Tower Road both into 4 lanes. We were forced. We were at the point where we were receiving nothing to help us down there, so we did go to our citizens and pass a 1 cent sales tax. I was just in Florida last week, and all the nice highways that I rode on, I was stopping and or doing my throwing my change in the pocket. So that's how they're doing it down there in Florida. Every place you go, you're paying a toll.
All right, do I have anyone on the board that has an objection to letting the staff move forward with this investigation? If not, I'm going to I believe have a consensus to have staff continue to work, and when we have something, they will bring it back and report out at that time. Everybody all right? Okay. Thank you for your time on that. Let's move on, and Mr. Pfeiffer, would you like to report out on the RTC?
I think we're going to have a preview tonight of everything at RTC. It went well yesterday. A long discussion more around the technology part. You'll hear a little bit about that tonight. But that's pretty much what we just covered is what we'll be seeing later in tonight. And I'll tell you real quick. We went over the stamp UC, which you'll hear on item 13, 14. We did talk about the modeling networks for air quality. And 15 as well. And like I said, a lot of discussion around technology and how do we institutionalize it and how do we bring it all together as a region, as there's many efforts around in the region trying to all solve this operational improvement through our transportation system. So I'm sure there'll be maybe some discussion around that tonight. That's it.
Diak, you have P&E.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight at P&E, we discussed the awards for the upcoming DRCOG Awards ceremony, Distinguished Service, and John V. Christensen. We also discussed the framework of the board workshop. It will be August 23rd and 24th. So that is all.
Ms. Stolzman,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So once again, our area agency on aging did it again. Under the leadership of Director Sanchez Warren, they were able to get additional funding, about $18,000. So we're really happy about that. The Finance Committee accepted that additional funding. They also are working really hard in getting some bus passes for senior citizens that are much needed. It'll help people get around more. So we approved that as well. And the transportation group is doing some really impressive work trying to come up with a regional Vision Zero plan to follow in Denver's honorable leadership. So they're working on that, and hopefully we'll be able to see the results of that planning soon and reduce the fatalities and the injuries in our transportation segment. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, since Lynn's not here, we'll acknowledge Lynn's 5-year term here on the board, the council member from the city of Brighton. I thought for sure she was going to be here tonight because we had this guaranteed we would not hand out another Bob Roth clock. Bob's not going to live that down for a while. But we do want to thank Lynn for her service here on DRCOG representing the city of Brighton and for her 5 years of service.
All right, Mr.
Yeah, I knew it was coming.
Come on. So I have the pleasure of recognizing Mayor Atchison for his 5 years of service. You know, it's not a clock.
I know, I'm
not
just
a
going to
clock.
rub it in, Bob, not a clock.
It's called Mount Atchison? I didn't
Yeah.
know there's such a, I don't know where that mountain came from. I thought it was flat or a cowboy hat.
Yeah.
But
It has a
wanna
tall
take
brim.
I want to take a few minutes to recognize his 5 years of service here and his leadership within DRCOG.
Staff here knows how much I hate this kind of stuff.
You would not believe how much he hated that.
We made you do-
I do appreciate it. The time I've had here is not
a nice
over.
one.
I'm going to move over here in a little bit from the chair to the past chair, but I'm not leaving DRCOG. But to all of you, thank you very much for all the work you've done this past year. Regardless of how things have turned out, where we're at, I think you guys have done a damn good job. And if anything, you owe yourselves a round of applause for the work you have done. So please, thank yourselves. Okay, if you can get Doug from breaking the microphone again, we'll see if we can get through the executive director's report. And don't mess with my wood block.
Yeah, your block of wood as he refers to it. I don't know if that's better than the clock. So thank you, sir, very much. One programmatic note, we are having a March work session. This is where you chair. So there was two topics, mobility choice blueprint. So this was supposed to be presented at the February work session, Snowmageddon. We didn't have any meetings. So we're going to do it on the March 6th work session agenda. Just so you all know, there was some mobility choice. We had a kickoff event yesterday. It was kind of a celebration of the completion of the study. Yesterday at History Colorado, there's over 100 people that were there. We had representatives of the executive committee, both Vice Chair Pfeiffer and Treasurer Stolzman were both in attendance at that. I thought it was a great event, and so we'll be doing a full brief out for you guys on that, and talk about next steps. So that'll be at the next meeting. Also, we're going to be talking about the proposed MetroVision amendments. There's some revisions to a couple of the targets that we want to bring before you, as well as we've had some applications for changes or new urban centers. So we'll talk about those at the next work session, which is on March 6th. Award celebration. All right, we're getting close. So it's in April. So we're less than a couple months out from the annual awards. Please, registration is open. If you have not registered, please get online and register. This is the event that we recognize projects from across the region, the people who've contributed to our success. So please, 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 this is your event. And we had a tremendous turnout last year, and I'm hoping we'll have a great turnout again this year. So for the directors, registration is free, but you still have to go online and register. There are sponsorship opportunities still available. So if you feel so inclined, buy a table and treat your staff to this event and thank them for the work that they do on behalf of you all for this region over the past year. So Winter Bike to Work Day. Did anybody ride on Winter Bike to Work Day? I know a few did. I saw you guys tweet out. So some brave souls right there. I don't know if you guys remember, it was freezing. I wimped out, I'm not going to lie, but I am committed to doing it, and so I will definitely do so. But we dominated the international competition. Denver finished #1 internationally. Boulder finished second. Beating out such international powerhouses as Dansk, Poland, Montreal, and Winnipeg. So there you go. How about that? So we actually had, Aurora finished 11th, and we had 14 other DRCOG communities that finished in the top 100. So that's pretty darn sweet. And so thank you very much to Steve Erickson and his crew. They organized this event. They actually organized the event statewide, so we really do appreciate the effort associated with that. So for our, oh boy, for our small community, so our small communities out there, for our small communities out there, as you know, gee whiz, we do this small communities hot topic forum annually. We've done it now. This is probably the fourth one that we'll be doing. So we'll be sending out a survey here real soon to get your ideas and concepts for what would make up good topics for the small areas, small communities hot topics forum. So please look for that in your inbox. Citizens Academy, we're running our second Citizens Academy from April 4th through May 16th. The deadline to apply is March 8th. Would you please consider some citizens within your communities that think that might benefit from this type of Citizens Academy? I mean, actually the number of applications we have is up this year, up from our first one. But we are always looking for more and looking to diversify that academy as much as we can. So if you have any ideas, please reach out to those folks and ask them to register. It's free, so we would love to have them and share a little bit about what you all do as well as what we do here in the region. ULI Technical Advisory Committee, DRCOG is pleased to announce that we are continuing the efforts to partner with our member communities through the ULI. Each of you, you have a cover page at your seats that kind of talks about, it's a recent announcement that talks about the opportunity for your communities to host a technical advisory panel through ULI Colorado. We're providing matching funds for 2 of those TAPs. As we have done in previous years. So if you're interested in that, please sign up. I think those that have done it in the past would definitely say that it's worthy. There's a worthy opportunity for the communities. So please consider that. We're going through our DRCOG audit right now. We're right in the middle of our annual Circular A133 audit. We should be wrapped up by the end of March. So please be kind to Jenny. I just avoid her, to be honest with you. That's what I'm doing. I don't know if she's even here. And just on some personnel news, we have a new HR director. He started yesterday, or I started on, Tuesday. Yeah, yesterday. His name is Randy Arnold. He has over 27 years of experience. Has served employers in the fields of long-term care, which he gained instant street cred with our AAA folks, environmental services, and most recently higher education. He last served as the Associate Vice President of Human Resources at Naropa University in Boulder. He's not here this evening. I quite frankly forgot to tell him about the board meeting. So I will make sure he's represented at the next meeting. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I am done with my report.
This time, we'd like to move to public comments. This is a period of up to 45 minutes is allocated for public comment, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. If there are additional requests from the public to address the board, time will be allocated at the end of the meeting to complete public comment. The chair requests that there be no public comment on issues for which a prior public hearing has been held before this board. Consent and action items will begin immediately after the last speaker. Do we have anyone who would like to address the board from the public? I told you it's going to be a short meeting. All right, next, I am proud to announce that we have 2 great new winners of next month's Spotlight. Jeff Baker, congratulations for Arapahoe County. And since Eva's not here, we're going to assign it to Adams County as well. Teach them not to show up. So Adams County and Arapahoe County will be on your spotlights for communities for the next meeting. And at this point, I'd like to turn to the town of Castle Rock.
Good evening. My name is Frank Gray. I am the president and CEO of Castle Rock Economic Development Council. So I got the dubious honor, or basically George and Jason threw me under the bus, to present this evening. And it's Castle Rock in 5 minutes or less. That's the goal. All right. So just talking a little bit about the community, some of the things that are interesting. 5th wealthiest county in the U.S., growing business climate, some of the awards and highlights, which we all have in our own separate communities, good places to live, good places to be a part of. Talk about the population growth. It says 69,000 here. We're creeping up on 75,000. We're adding about 1,200 homes a year in permits, and we're doing about 3,000 residents. That's what that's basically equating to. So we're seeing some pretty rapid growth in Castle Rock. Average household income is really, really good. We're pretty excited about the income growth there, which means we have a lot of disposable income to get to some of our newest projects, the Promenade, roughly about 1 million square feet in Castle Rock of retail, and the outlet malls continue to soar. They've just exceeded 6 million in visitors, which, sad to say, in our state of Colorado puts it in the top 5 of tourist attractions in the state. So I say sad because I think it should be. There are a lot of other things, parts of Colorado that could be awesome, but we love all your sales tax, so keep on bringing it. I bring up this slide because I think it shows a little bit of the demonstration of what it is that is going on in Castle Rock. Yes, I intentionally have 2015 data up there. Those of you that follow Mosaic data, I'm sorry to nerd out on you real quick, but the Mosaic data kind of gives you a psychographic analysis of what it is that's going on in your community and how there's people's spending patterns and credit card spending patterns play out in your community, and they have all these really nifty topics and categories that they throw you into. This one is Babies in Bliss from 2015, so that's basically your nuclear family. This made up 37% of our community. We're going like, okay, that kind of gets it. We're the burbs. And Generational Soup only made up 12.5. Well, fast forward, bang, 2017, Generational Soup, 45.5%. And Babies in Bliss, did they all leave? Did they all just take off? Did they all move to some other community? No, we believe that trend in data is because a lot of the millennials are now in your basement, and mom and dad are moving home. So that therefore puts them into a different category and a reclassification, and therefore you're talking about more generational soup, more people living under one roof with increased prices and housing stock and median home price going through the roof. Unemployment in Castle Rock remains remarkably low, and our partners in Douglas County are right there with us. Median home value going up and up and up. If I have one warning for everybody, it's always like when this starts to become more than 30, 40, 50% of the wages that are not keeping up with inflation, we're in for trouble and more millennials in your basement. So that's what you got to look forward to. But home values are going up. Castle Rock, current lease rates, industrial, commercial, we're starting to look a lot more where we were a low-cost provider for a long time. We are no longer a low-cost provider in Castle Rock. In fact, if you looked at the lease rates there for industrial, you can see they're at $15, where metro area is more like around $12. And you're going, well, why is it so expensive? Because of pure scarcity in Castle Rock. We are below 1% vacancy in industrial. We had one building go on the market, and we shot through the roof, and then the building went off the market, and we're back down to sub 1%. So you can see some of the vacancy rates here. Contiguous office does not exist in Castle Rock. So if you want over 5,000 square feet, we usually say, how do you feel about building a building? And so that is a really big challenge that we're working on right now, working really closely with our town council to find out ways that we can grow the office and the primary employment in Castle Rock. Permits heading in the right direction. The big stuff you see in 2017, a lot of that is the Promenade that was building out the 900,000 square feet. We are at about 650,000 to 700,000 of the square feet are already built, and we've got about another 200,000 to go. In migration, out migration, we put way too many people. The short version of this slide is we put way too many people onto I-25, and we need to keep more of those jobs and residents in Castle Rock. Traffic counts. We've won a lot of economic development awards. That's not because we're great. It's because our community is great. Lots, very, very collaborative. Our community, the Downtown Development Authority, the Downtown Merchants Association, the Economic Development Council, and the town meet once a week, every Monday, to have conversations about what our community is doing and how we're all headed in the right direction, and are we paddling in the same direction. So with that, we also won Most Innovative Economic Development Group from the Rockies Venture Club we started a venture capital group inside of Castle Rock EDC. And so that venture club then turned into a relationship with the Innisphere, and the Innisphere has opened an office now in Castle Rock in our new collaboration campus, which I'll highlight here shortly. And then the Metropolitan Cooperation Award with Amazon HQ2. When we were the first community to opt out, we said, yep, we're out, we're not doing it. And then they said, wait, hey, you want to be an analyst? And I said, oh, man. So then I got to be one of the analysts that were on that project, and they gave us award for the community participation on that project. Obviously, Douglas County School District, exceptional school district. We'll just keep on moving through that. So the platform you are seeing is one that we created because we just felt like there wasn't any good platforms. And so we started our own company inside of the Economic Development Group in Castle Rock. It's called Site Connect. And then so this platform is available for anyone for sale if you want to talk to me later. But we couldn't connect the dots when we were talking to people and literally going like, hey, here's this project, that project, this project, this project. So we started to connect the dots for people. And so I'm just going to highlight 3 dots on here, and then I'm going to get out of your way. So dot number 1 that I'd like to highlight here is on our downtown. Our downtown just exceeded about $200 million in investment over the last 2 or 3 years. So we're really, really excited about that. Mostly mixed-use development projects. The one that is under construction right now, if you go into downtown Castle Rock, yes, you can see the state bird, 2 cranes in downtown Castle Rock. And this project here is called the Riverwalk Project. 30,000 square feet of office, retail, 20,000 square feet of retail, and roughly 250 apartment units that'll be going up. And some of those things that are on there, you can kind of get a feel of what's going on right now. And this is very real right now. If you drive down to downtown Castle Rock, you can actually see this stuff all forming. So they should be leasing apartments sometime in summer. They also put a $6 million investment across the street into less than an acre of ground in our Festival Park Commons there. So that was one of the impetus for them to do that project where it is right there. And we do that through our Downtown Development Authority. One of the crown jewels of Castle Rock is our collaboration campus, which will be opening with 600 students. We just got enrollment today so far, up-to-date enrollment, which is right next to our major medical campus. But we put the Castle Rock Collaboration Campus here. The town invested $3 million in this as an economic driver for our community, which we're really, really excited about. The Collaboration Campus is a collaboration between Douglas County School District, Arapahoe Community College, and Colorado State University. So we're really excited about what that's going to do. This is 3/4 of the way done. We're actually touring it tomorrow with our executive committee, but we are going to be able to see that thing open up here in really short order, and the enrollment's already going through the roof. And from a primary employment standpoint, it is an amazing attraction tool because Colorado's big advantage is our people. When companies are locating here, they're locating here because of the amazing workforce that we have in Colorado. And they want to know where is this workforce coming from for me, period, exclusively. And so we've now put lots of internships with existing employers, and new employers that we're entertaining in our community are going, wow, this is a really big asset. We would love to be close to that. So just a couple of the highlights there. And then our really, really big project, which is going to hopefully have about 500,000 square feet of office and a 250-room hotel, is Miller's Landing. So Miller's Landing is right here. And we are really excited about this one because we think it can be just something that could be spectacular. That is the short version. So hopefully everybody, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that's just 3 of the projects that we have up on our screen, and we think it's going to be a great 2019 in Castle Rock. So with that, I think I will open it to any questions and then turn it over to our partners in Parker. No questions? Parker.
Hi all, my name's John Foose. I'm the Community Development Director for the Town of Parker. And thanks for the invitation to present what we're working on in Parker, the good things, the challenges, et cetera. I assume that we got nominated because John Dyack may have missed a meeting recently. And excellent job, Frank. Per usual, we'll pass that on to Matt Carlson, and our Economic Development Manager, and see what he can do for the next time we're up here. So in terms of where we are in Parker, as you know, we're southeast side of the metro, about 20 miles from downtown Denver, on the suburban edge, although that suburban edge is washing over us as it heads south and east. And without going through this, you can read this. But where we are, we've been bumping along at about 300 to 400 single-family permits for the past few years. In 2018, we issued almost 400 single-family permits, 455 multifamily permits, so about 850 residential permits for new housing starts. Pretty busy for us, especially the multifamily. We've had a real surge in that for Parker. We think we're near the end of that, and we're all looking on in anticipation to see how the market absorbs all those units. We issued almost 1,000 commercial permits, total construction valuation in 2018 of over $300 million, 165 brand new development applications of all kinds last year that we're processing, and then business retention visits with our 2-person economic development staff, almost 65. Again, challenges, this list may look familiar to you. Pick and choose, maybe your list is larger or smaller. But some of them, again, the rapid pace of growth and development, causing us to think about Parker as a growth community, the residential retail growth model, which as we develop and build out, we can see the horizon for build out in Parker probably 15, 20 years out. It's certainly going to affect us, and we're starting to think about that. Transportation especially is a real issue on the infrastructure side. Housing, providing a full range of housing, market rate, workforce affordable, and senior housing is a challenge for us. Preserving community character and the quality of life that we think makes Parker a special place, like your communities. We hear a lot about that from our residents. Financial stability, like many communities, we've started to see a real slowdown in the rate of retail sales tax generation. So we're still growing, but the rate of growth is certainly slowing. And then intergovernmental coordination with our partners. We're also busy. There are so many needs. Is finding time to carve out real partnerships to solve the problems that affect us all. One of the projects that we're really excited about in Parker and proud of is what we call My Main Street. It's a partnership of the Town of Parker with the P3 Urban Renewal Authority, with the Urban Renewal Authority as the lead. We've had over the past few years a series of stops and starts with downtown development and redevelopment. And so after the last kind of stop in 2017, our mayor and council said to us at the staff level, let's kind of hit the pause button and think about what we're doing. And instead of launching into another RFP or solicitation, let's go back out to the community and our residents and engage with them and really find out what they wanted to see in our downtown on several town-owned properties, and see if we could generate community support for good projects that would expand and further activate our small downtown. So we've spent the past year or so working with our mayor and town council on the My Main Street community engagement process. And we're near the end of that process. We spent all of last year doing it, essentially going out to the community, doing market analysis, looking at our planning and zoning documents and figuring out what might work. And the good news is that we had great community engagement. We had more than 10,000 of our 53,000 or so residents engage with us, both in person and through the My Main Street digital platform. We got great input, feedback, and discussion. While you never get to true consensus, right, we built a level of support for downtown development and redevelopment that we have not had in the past. And so we're very excited about that. What we did, again, this is just stepping through very quickly, we tried to find an alignment between the town's planning, vision, and policy, including zoning, public input, and then kind of market analysis and feasibility. And the diagram kind of expresses that to see where we had overlap. And we started out with 4 town-owned sites. Now we're up to 5 town-owned sites. Really good support and from the community to go to the market to develop these sites, probably in a phased manner over time in a way that fits our downtown character. We also did some market analysis, some conceptual planning and design. This is simply an illustration of it. We wanted to understand not only the market feasibility, but the revenues generated to the town, both in TIF increment to the Urban Renewal Authority and then retail sales tax. So we did this for each of our 5 sites. We're now in the final stages of going to implementation. We're negotiating. We've decided not to do, after consultation with mayor and council, we decided not to go back to an RFP process. We've done that a few times without much success. So we're in the final stages of negotiation with a very good commercial brokerage firm to take an assignment that would market the 5 town-owned sites into the marketplace to see what the market interest is and see if we can get to disposition and sale consistent with this My Main Street framework. We worry, I think, at the staff level, and we've talked to council about this, that we're late in the cycle to do this. Nonetheless, we're kind of committed to go forward. We think that this is a longer-term phased effort. And so this map shows the 5 properties, about 32 acres total, on the east end of our small downtown. We're very excited about that. We look at Castle Rock and the work that Frank and his partners at the town have done. We think that's terrific. We hope to replicate some of those successes, probably smaller scale, kind of smaller Parker scale that fits our much smaller downtown. And we think that's a great example in Castle Rock for how to move your downtown forward. And we're taking our own tack on that. Moving on, corridor plans. I heard Mayor Atchison mention corridor plans and funding. The major state highway through Parker, State Highway 83, Parker Road. It's our main street. It's our front door. It's also the bane of our existence in some ways in terms of traffic, mobility, not land use, a really kind of ad hoc, not so desirable land use pattern. The town last dug into that with CDOT in 2003, 2004. We're in the middle, finishing mid-year this year, of a new Parker Road corridor plan with CDOT kind of side by side with us. We've had really great participation from them, looking at basically a comprehensive land use and transportation plan for the corridor through town, looking at mobility, multimodal opportunities, safety, looking at land use patterns to set up zoning changes, and looking at a long-range phased implementation. And these are just this is a map of the corridor through town, really focused on land use and transportation. We're very excited that we think this will build kind of a 10 to 20-year framework for how we move that corridor forward in the town. And we keep our fingers crossed that at some point there'll be funding for some of the improvements we're conceptualizing. Again, more graphics and exhibits. I'll just point your attention to the map at the right. That illustrates one of the concepts that we're working on for the intersection of State Highway 83, Parker Road, and Main Street, which is our downtown in Parker. Right now, it's a typical suburban highway intersection. We desire and envision that it could be more. We worry Parker Road is a real barrier connecting the 2 sides of Main Street, our downtown. So we'd like to deal with the regional mobility and local mobility issues, but also reprogram and replan for long-run redevelopment and stitch the 2 sides of our downtown back together, because the highway really does separate them. And so what I'll show you next is simply a short, relatively short, no more than 2-minute kind of narrated visualization of how we might, in the long run, working with CDOT, the Urban Renewal Authority, and other partners, reprogram, replan, and redevelop that intersection.
The Parker Road Corridor Plan examined 3 alternatives for the Parker and Main Street intersection. The first alternative is a $43 million grade-separated diamond interchange with roundabout. This alternative impacts 9 properties, including O'Brien Park, and only sets the stage for limited redevelopment of the district. The second alternative is a $6 million continuous flow intersection at Long's Way. This alternative impacts 3 properties, but sets the immediate redevelopment of the southeast and the longer-term development of the southwest quadrant of the intersection. A variant on this alternative is a $10 million investment with left turn access through O'Brien Park. This third alternative creates the complete redevelopment for the entire district, including O'Brien Park. The goal of this project is to create an integrated land use and transportation plan for the town of Parker and the Colorado Department of Transportation. The specific objective of this intersection's design is to create a redevelopment strategy and transportation investment that better connects downtown and creates the long-term redevelopment framework that's consistent with the town of Parker's 2030 master plan, while meeting the regional mobility obligations of the Colorado Department of Transportation State Route 83. Each of these alternatives meet the 2040 DRCOG traffic projections with acceptable levels of service. The alternatives vary on their impacts in downtown Parker. The third alternative is a $10 million continuous flow intersection with roadway through O'Brien Park. We believe this creates a redevelopment strategy for the entire district. The second alternative removes the left turn lane from O'Brien Park. However, we only believe it creates a redevelopment strategy for the southern half of the greater downtown district. The third alternative is a grade-separated $43 million investment. We believe that only creates limited redevelopment opportunities for the town of Parker.
So we've bitten quite a bit off with just even this area, but we're trying to think long-term, working with mayor and council and our partners about how we can address mobility, land use, and redevelopment in our small downtown over the next 2 decades at least. Lastly, and I'll just wrap this up stepping through, Parker's zoning code has been jury-rigged and put together with bubblegum and chicken wire since incorporation in 1981. For a relatively small community, we have 80-plus planned unit development zone districts. It is a nightmare for residents, applicants, investors, and staff. And so we've just kicked off a 30 to 36 month effort with Clarion Associates as our consulting partner to completely modernize and overhaul zoning. In fact, tonight's our first community open house, so stay tuned for that. We also were very proud, a small project we undertook last year was a complete streets policy. We think as Parker develops and matures, we're thinking not just about what we do when we get in our cars and trucks, but a multimodal approach to transportation, mobility, and access. And so we completed that last year. Our town council endorsed and adopted it. It's now part of the town master plan. And aside from and it was a multimodal, faceted effort, planning, engineering, police department, parks and rec, and aside from the usual disagreements by planners and engineers, kind of cats and dogs, we got through it, and we think it sets a template for the future. Lastly, you all deal with parks and open space. We were fortunate enough to partner with the Epley Institute of Indiana University last year on a brand new state-of-the-art for Parker, parks, recreation, and open space plan that sets our open space template and recreational template for the next 10 to 15 years. As well, we're very proud of that effort. And we also, one of the major priorities and projects there is working with partners is the High Plains Trail, including the grade separated overcrossing of that trail over Parker Road, working with Arapahoe County, City of Aurora, Douglas County, and of course, DRCOG, we thank you for your support of that effort and that major infrastructure project. And we've got some images there, bottom right, you may have seen these. We think that's a really important project and just exemplifies the town's efforts, like your efforts, to address community character and quality of life concerns. And that's it for us. Any questions or comments?
Comments or questions for John and the town of Parker?
Thank you.
John, thank you guys very much. Well, Jeff and Eva, since you're not here, again, another outstanding presentation from some of our members we look forward to seeing from Arapahoe and Adams County at the next meeting. Next item up on our agenda is going to move over to the motion to approve the consent agenda. This is for the minutes of the January 16th meeting. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. I have a second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Next item, we're moving on to attachment C. I know the chair of the nominating committee was not able to be with us tonight. That's Ron Rakowski. So to the members of the nominating committee, do you have anyone who'd like to add any comments in place of the chair? Ms. Jones, if you would.
Well, I think I'll just channel Mayor Rakowski in saying that we had 3 great applicants. It was a very difficult choice to make because we had an abundance of riches, but we were able to, through good conversation, reach a unanimous conclusion and recommend Kevin Flynn to be the next board officer.
So the election of our officer will be that Bob Pfeiffer will become the chair. I will move to the position of immediate past chair. The vice chair position would be filled by John Dyack from Parker. The secretary would be Ashley Stolzman from Louisville. And as you just heard from Ms. Jones, Kevin Flynn will be joining as the treasurer representing the city of county of Denver. At this point, I would entertain a motion to elect the board off. What do you want now? Are there nominations from the floor? All right, Bob. At this point, I would move the motion to elect the board officers for 2019. Do I have such a motion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Pfeiffer, you got it.
I do want to take a quick minute to recognize our outgoing past chair, Mr. Bob Roth. Had the pleasure of working or following great leaders of this organization, Elise Jones, Bob Roth, and now Mayor Atchison. And so since you're leaving our board, I want to have you come up real quick, or leaving our, executive team, not the board, executive team, come up and let me give you something, a little appreciation of your service to the executive team. So I'm not as cool as Elise with collaboration, but I know what he drinks. I did find that out. So thank you, Bob. Yeah, if those that are around, Elise Jones, I think cannot top what she did. Oh. Bob doesn't drink water. If you just look what's in it, just smell it. But Elise brought 1 year beer, if you don't remember. So I think the outgoing chair at the time, and it was named Collaboration, or past, I can't remember what role, but it was called Collaboration, right? I think that was a great, at the time where DRCOG was, I think that was a really great gift. I don't think I could ever top that, but it sticks with my head about where this board has gone. And that being said, I want to recognize Herb Atchison for his steady hand on the wheel of this organization. He's everywhere all the time, looking out for the best interest for not only his community, but for all of us in this room. And, you know, I can't think of how many boards I've been on with him, from urban drainage to here and in many places, but I truly appreciate what he does for us in our community, in our region. So I did get you something special. I didn't bring the props. I did have props. Bob Roth called it out, but he told me I can't embarrass him because he doesn't like this stuff. So I thought I'd take the higher road versus my props. And I got him a, no. This is, I know he likes Crown Royal. Well, and Herb, I upgraded you just because I think you deserve it. You did a good year with us, and you drove us. Yeah, it's reserved, so he's spoiled. Yeah, you're welcome, Herb. All right. Thank you, everybody. All right, next item number 12, discussion of draft 2019 policy statement for the federal legislative issues. Where's Rich? Oh, there you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations. So I think most of you know, about every year around this time, I bring forward the state legislative policy statement and federal legislative policy statement. You approved the state policy statement back in December. Last month, we presented in your board packet the federal policy statement with various changes and so forth, asked for comments, and brought it back for this month for consideration and action by the board. We did not receive any comments or questions in the last month, so unless there are any comments or questions right now, would respectfully entertain a motion to approve the federal 2019 federal policy statement.
Second. I even asked if there's any questions, you guys. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next agenda item, number 13, discussion of fiscal year 2019 Station Area Master Plan Urban Center Stamp UC Transportation Improvement Program, set aside funding recommendations. Webb?
All right, good evening. Thank you, everyone. My name is Derek Webb. I'm a planner here at DRCOG. I'm here, as the chair mentioned, to bring forth the FY19 Stamp UC recommendations that were developed by our evaluation panel just a couple months ago. Jumping right in, I just want to give you guys kind of a high-level highlight of the past, I think, 11 years. But first, what Stamp UC is, it was created to help create local visions and action strategies that ultimately assist in the implementation of MetroVision. High-level background, there's 4 types of eligible planning studies within the set-aside. Stationary master plan, urban center studies, kind of what we call original studies. Next step studies, which would focus on further looking into those original studies or other local plans that have already taken place. Corridor-wide plans, and area planning and implementation strategies. As I alluded to just a second ago, a little bit of background on the history in the past 11, I guess now 12 years. Since 2007, the Stamp UC set-aside has funded 61 studies, basically expending about a total investment of just over $11 million. You can see the total federal funding there is close to about $8 million over that time period. Again, since 2007, we've seen 61 studies. Just a little over half of those fall into the original category, with 33 falling into that category. You see 12 with next steps, 10 with corridor-wide, and then 6 with area-wide. I also do want to highlight that over the course of the past several years, we've had about 21 participants in the program using the funds to think through stationary and urban center plans. Because this is the last year, FY19 is the last year of the Stamp UC funding set aside as set up in the tip. I do want to kind of give you guys a coming soon or a highlight that we are currently in the process of working through what we're calling the community mobility planning and implementation set aside. The graphic kind of notes that we're taking Stamp UC, adding it to the TDM small infrastructure set aside, and then suddenly creating this thing we're calling CMPI. It's really not a one-for-one relationship. We're not just copying what's in Stamp UC and what's in the small infrastructure set aside.
we're really taking some of the things that we've learned over the past several years, what we've learned from our communities, those that have previously used these funds to try to develop a new set aside that really focuses on the link between small area planning and or transportation planning studies with small infrastructure projects to actually get toward some implementation of what's coming out of these studies. With that said, back to the FY19 STAMP UC set aside. The 2018-21 TIP established $1.2 million in federal funds for the FY18-19. Due to some delay in kind of figuring out the administration of the funds, we're now just doing FY19. That is to say that all of those funds are still available. Nothing has delayed that. Additionally, there were some funds, returned funds from the FY 2017 STAMP UC call that were ultimately rolled back into the funding source. So we have $1.4 million to allocate. In October 2018, RTC reviewed the STAMP UC eligibility and evaluation criteria. Also in October of 2018, the board also approved the STAMP UC eligibility and evaluation criteria. Almost immediately, we released the call for projects for the funding source. That ran until about December 7th, I believe. And with that, we received 12 applications for a total request of just over $2.2 million, roughly close to $900,000 over what we have to allocate. The evaluation process. So just about, I think it's about a month and a half ago, we convened the committee. The review committee consisted of regional partners like CDOT, RTD. We also tapped into ULI Colorado and also included representatives from eligible entities that had not requested funds through this funding source. Just a note, DRCOG staff really just provided the administrative support to this evaluation committee, kind of acting as the point of contact between the applicants and the evaluation committee and just making sure that things were clear in the application. We also did do an eligibility screen prior to the evaluation committee, really looking through all of the applications. The committee evaluated the studies individually. They were provided all of the application materials along with an evaluation template to kind of help guide them through what they should be thinking through as they're reviewing all of the applications. And that evaluation criteria really focused on 4 areas: study need, innovation and feasibility, local commitment and ability to implement, and then contributions to the outcomes outlined in MetroVision. Out of that evaluation process, we have 8 studies which are being brought forward to you guys today. I would highlight 2 things. All of the studies include at least one of each eligible study type that I outlined before. And I would also mention that all of the sponsors that applied did receive funding for at least one of their projects. We had multiple sponsors submit several different applications. Just in anticipation of a question specifically with the commuting solutions recommendation, you'll notice that the amount requested and the amount recommended are slightly different. That's really based on how the scoring criteria came through and the committee discussion. And ultimately, at the end of that discussion, we only had about $100,000 left. And based on the precedent from the FY16-17 discussion, where we had about $50,000 left over, some of you may remember that, we actually had to turn around and try to figure out how to reallocate that $50,000 so that nothing was kind of left unspent. We kind of took that into consideration here and made sure that all of the available funds were at least allocated during this last round of the STAMP UC funding. We approached Commuting Solutions with the lesser amount, and they determined that with a little bit of elevated partner support, they were able to take the decrease in federal funding. That's pretty much my spiel. If anybody has any questions, I'm willing to entertain them. We have a proposed motion in front of you, but happy to stay.
Do we have any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Noes, abstentions, that motion passes. Next up, item number 15, discussion of amending the fiscal year 2018 through 19 Unified Plan sorry, skipped one. Back to 14. Modeling networks of air quality conformity associated with the proposed 2018 amendments of the 2040 Metro Vision Regional Transportation Plan. Mr. Rieger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. So we had a call for amendments to our 2040 MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan, as well as our MetroVision Plan. This is our routine amendment call that we do about once a year. We had the call last fall. We received on the transportation side several proposed amendments, really locally funded amendments from local governments that are in the table, that are in the item, in your item for this, in your memo for this item. So we're not asking you to approve those amendments tonight. We are asking you to approve the modeling networks that will contain those amendments so that we can complete the traffic modeling and the air quality conformity modeling that we need to do to meet federal requirements. This will come back to you with those results and a public hearing in April. We'll bring everything back to you, ask you to, in May, to approve the plan as amended. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Mr. Flynn.
Was there any discussion this morning at RTC?
Yes, RTC recommended approval.
Yeah, they approved it, as well as the other one. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion. Uh-oh, who's writing it? We're missing Connie.
All right, we got it.
All right. See what happens when we lose Connie? We fall apart.
I'll do it.
I'm sorry, what's that? I hear screeching over in that corner. Who?
Libby, I never treated you that way, now just remember. I still love you, my tip administrator for Jefferson County.
He might not get a block of wood.
Yeah. You might not get any
We've been
money.
bantering back
it
all night long between my county and I. We love each other, so. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any noes, abstentions? The motion's approved. Moving on to item 15 now, discussion of amending the fiscal 2018 through 19 Unified Planning Work Program. Mr. Cottrell. Bless you.
Thank you and good evening. So like the Chair said, Attachment G, amendments for the federal fiscal year 2018 and 2019 Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP. So the UPWP is a program that describes all the transportation planning activities within the Denver region. Essentially what this is the MPO's work program. It's prepared every 2 years, and periodically it does need to be amended to contain different items in our work program or update any financial information. The track changes version for this amendment is linked within Attachment G if you need to go through that. But I would like to highlight just a few of the changes that are more pertinent. Again, I'm not going to go through all the changes, but there's a few that just to point out. Activity 2.1 under the public engagement and outreach, we have added to hold the Citizens Academy. Also on activity 2.1 for public engagement as a deliverable, we have added that we will deliver the public engagement plan. In fact, that will be a subject of a public hearing before this board next month. Activity 3.1, MetroVision Plan, we have added that we will prepare a regional complete streets toolkit. Another item of note is under activity 5.5 for transportation safety planning. We are actually removing a deliverable of complete the regional Vision Zero towards zero deaths plan. Staff believes that we will not be able to deliver this before the end of this document, which ends on September 30th. However, it will be included with the next UPWP for fiscal years 20 and 21 that begins on October 1st, and that will actually be brought to you for action sometime this summer. And finally, towards the back in Appendix A, tables 2 and 3, those have been updated to reflect the newest financial information and to also add the funding component to complete the Complete Streets Toolkit. So with that, both TAC and RTC have recommended for approval, and I'd be happy to take any comments or questions if you have them.
Comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion. Have a question?
I was waiting to be called on, and then I would make a
Oh,
motion
sorry, your
rather
hand
than
was
just yell
behind
out.
Sandy. I'm sorry. Yes?
I move we approve the amendments to the UPWP.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That motion's approved. Next up, discussion of state legislative issues. We have bills on which positions we've previously been taken on, so we'll look for Rich. Tomorrow?
Hello again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have for you a handful of new bills that have been introduced since last session. A couple of them I called out last month because they had just been introduced. I will note that I also have a spreadsheet in there, a matrix in there, updating the status of the 3 bills that you took positions on last month, and those statuses are still current, so there's really nothing to add for those. So unless there's questions on those 3 bills, I'd like to move to the next attachment, which is the new bills. Okay. And let me also note for you, we also have with us again here in the back our contract lobbyists, Ed Bowditch and Jennifer Castle. So if you really want to know what's really going on down at the Capitol, they're the ones actually to talk to ask us. So, but they're here to answer any questions that I can't. So if we can start on page 1 of the matrix, which has House Bill 1157, modifying specific ownership tax, and asking, staff is recommending a position of oppose on that bill. This bill increases the existing state or specific ownership tax on vehicles and directs that increased amount be allocated to the Highway Users Tax Fund, which is not something that happens with any of the current SOT tax. And it would be the first time that any of that money actually would go to the state. And the bill also doesn't provide for any sort of multimodal use of the funds. So the staff recommends we oppose that. I would note for you also that both CML and CCI are opposing this bill as well. And so I think I'll stop there and we'll take each bill at one at a time and see if there's any questions or a motion on that.
Director Atchison.
Hey, Rich, remind me, I think we took a position of oppose on this last year when this was
Yes.
specifically brought up. So
Yes.
this is basically the same bill back again.
It's very similar, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll look for a motion to support staff's recommendation of opposed. Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Yes, Ms. Salzman? Oh, abstention. Making sure, I don't know what your hands are doing over there. That motion is approved and opposed for House Bill 1157.
Thank you. The next bill is Senate Bill 101, which is a bill that places several additional requirements on CDOT for studying and doing analyses on proposed managed lanes. Staff is also opposing that bill, I think primarily as considering it as duplicative and also not taking into account regional issues and perspectives regarding managed lanes. I would also note, and I think I could be corrected if I'm wrong, but I'd also note that CDOT is opposing this bill as well. And so I would, staff recommends an opposed position on that bill.
Any discussion or comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion and oppose for 101. Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's approved. Opposed for 101.
Okay, so that brings us to the next four bills. I see, is it four bills? Going right here. Three bills are housing bills, primarily renters' rights bills, except for the first one. And I mentioned these are also ones that I previewed at the board last month because they had just been introduced basically before we had time to get them in the packet. So anyway, the first bill is property tax rent heat rebate that DRCOG has supported this previous bills like this in the past. It would increase the income qualifications and also the grant amounts that go for very low income seniors and persons with disabilities to help offset some of their housing costs, their rent paid or their heat and fuel costs. And so the staff would recommend a support position on that bill.
Questions or comments? None. Looking for a motion in support of 1085. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion's approved for support for 1085.
Okay, the next one, House Bill 1106, is a bill, again, we talked about it last month, that puts various parameters on the rental application fees that landlords can charge, and basically gives renters, applicants, and tenants a few more options in terms of transparency, understanding what the applications fees are, what they're being used for, that the amount of the fee is tied to actual costs for the landlord and that sort of thing. That bill had already has passed out of House Business Affairs and Labor, and I think it also passed on second reading in the House earlier today. So that looks like that should be on its way to the Senate here pretty soon. And I think also, if, just as a point of information, since it's already been noted that Eva isn't here tonight, I've had communications with Adams County staff, and I know that they've told me that they're supporting this bill, and staff recommends support.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion in support for 1106. Motion and second. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's approved for support for 1106.
Okay, and then the last bill, although I do have one other that's not on this list that I want to talk to you before I'm done, but the last bill is House Bill 1118 that basically increases the time period that tenant would have to cure a lease violation. Under current law, it's 3 days. This would make it 14 days. And this bill actually has been referred from House Business Affairs and Labor over to the new Transportation and Local Government Committee, and it will be heard in that committee next Wednesday, the 27th. And again, staff recommends the board support that bill.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, looking for a motion in support of 1118. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Support of 1118.
Okay, so one issue I wanted to talk to you about. Oh, did I? Oh, see, I thought there was another bill. Thank you. I was wanting to make so sure that I didn't forget that last bill or this other bill. Okay, so 1170 is what they refer to as a warranty of habitability bill, another rental bill. There's currently a warranty of habitability statute in law in Colorado right now, and this one provides for some additional provisions for renters, in that statute, and even to the point of concerns like in cases where a landlord is, or the conditions in the property or in an apartment are habitable, and the landlord is not meeting his or her requirements under the law, that it would actually give tenant the right to withhold rent until the law is followed. And there's a number of other provisions, but it's basically adding to the existing warranty of habitability statute. And some of the few more details are described in the staff comments there. Again, staff is recommending that we support that bill. It is still sitting in House Public Health Care and Human Services Committee, and is not at this time scheduled for a hearing.
Yes, Ms. Shaw.
That's covered in statute already. Yes. Yeah, there's nothing that this bill would do that would take away those kinds of rights for landlords.
Yes, sir. Hi, Libby. Sorry, I can't see you back there. I'm not picking
you're
on
in
you
big
tonight.
trouble now.
I know. She's going to have me later tonight.
Okay. Hey, Arvada, how's it going? Is there anything listed of what the criteria would be of uninhabitable? Because someone could say, my water pressure isn't good, I'm not going to pay my rent.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Yeah, I don't have those with me, but those types of things are actually listed in the statute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you want me to read a couple of them?
Yeah, if you want.
That'd be great.
Okay. If there's mold associated with dampness, or there's any other condition causing the premises to be damp, it has to have a functioning refrigerator, range, or oven, if these appliances are provided by the landlord. Well, whatever else is also in current statute.
Yeah, long list.
Have mold, can we not pay our mortgage too?
Yeah. That'll be a bill for next year.
Different bill. Okay. I don't know how to turn it.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes.
Looking for a motion in support of 1170. Second. Those in favor say aye. Any noes? Abstentions? 4. That motion's approved in support for 1170.
Okay. Now, for a bill that hasn't quite been introduced yet, but we've been asked to talk to you briefly about this. Actually, Ed and I were meeting this afternoon with freshman Representative Carrie Tipper, and she is a co-sponsor of a bill to, or has it been introduced? Okay, I wanted to make sure, that will be asking the legislature to actually approve some funding for census outreach efforts. You may have heard about this in some news reports. I think it has been talked about, and she's very interested in seeing local governments around the state help with this effort. Obviously, the main case that they're making is that the more accurate count that we get, meaning counting everybody in the state, the more likely we are to receive all of the federal funding that we're entitled to. So, by extension, if we don't do a very good job in Colorado of counting everybody in the census, we stand to lose hundreds or even more billions of dollars of potential federal funds over the next 10 years. And Ed, is there anything else I should add to that? I think she would like to see the board support this bill. I told her obviously we haven't had a chance to really talk to you about it, so we can put it on and it hasn't been introduced yet. So anyway, so we'll put it on the agenda for next month, assuming it's introduced by then. I do know, and Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, that I think the number that we've heard that they want to ask as an appropriation from in the long bill is $12 million to fund outreach efforts around the state. A lot of us who maybe even support this idea are very skeptical that they'll get that kind of money. So it may be that it's worth supporting the bill, but the funding issues are going to be determined by others as we go forward. Is there anything else to add on that? Okay. And I also throw out, sort of name check Steve Erickson back there. We've had a couple of conversations with census representatives here who've reached out to DRCOG staff about just seeing what we can do to help them get the word out about the census as when it gets kicked off, particularly reaching out to hard to count populations and areas. So you may be hearing more about that as well. That's all I have.
All right, any other questions for Rich? All right, thank you, Rich. Next up, item 17, discussion of the TIP Subregional Share Project Submission Presentation. Mr. Cottrell.
Thank you. So for those following along, this is attachment J. So periodically throughout the process for the 2023 TIP, both the regional call and the sub-regional call, DRCOG has held conference calls with the chairs, the vice chairs, and key technical staff of all 8 of the individual sub-regional forums. And this conference call, has really allowed staff to relay important information, such as the schedule that's included within your attachment, in addition to hearing updates from each of the forums and then allowing a free-flow conversation to find out if there's any issues, let's address them at this time, or of things that are or are not working. So at the last conference call that we had back on February 7th, so approximately 2 weeks ago, staff heard some concerns about the tight timeline that's laid out in front of us between February 27th and March 27th. So February 27th, a week from today, is when the sub-regional applications are due. And March 27th is the date where all the projects and the waiting list recommendations from each of the sub-regional forums are due to DRCOG. Now, the March 27th date is set so that we can have an April 3rd board work session to hear these forum presentations. And again, the information that we are hearing from both elected officials and the technical staff is they feel that, yes, they could probably meet this March 27th deadline, but it was really close, along with their personal workloads and other factors, just being able to really meet that deadline. So given that, staff has outlined a couple options for the board to consider, and this would still keep us in schedule to adopt this TIP this coming August. I guess getting into them, one would, the first option would be to have the forums present their recommendations at your April board meeting on April 17th instead of an April 3rd board work session. Most likely, this would add approximately an hour and a half to 2 hours to that meeting as an agenda item to allow each of the 8 forums to probably have a slideshow presentation and to explain the reasons behind why this suite of projects is the ones that they're bringing forth for recommendation. In addition, what this would do is allow additional time pushing that March 27th deadline back until April 5th, or giving each of the individual forums, instead of 4 weeks, they would have 5.5 weeks to return those recommendations to DRCOG staff. The second option that staff has created is to move your April 3rd board work session to April 24th, which would be 1 week following your April board meeting. This would increase that March 27th deadline to April 12th, giving the recommendation period from 4 weeks to 6.5 weeks. However, able to allow board members to hear presentations before TAC makes a recommendation on these projects to be included within the draft tip, we would need to move the TAC meeting from April 22nd to May 6th. So both of these options work in terms of the staff timeline, again, to still maintain an August adoption. But it's really up to you, and we're looking for some sort of feedback and perhaps action tonight that would guide us on what is the best path for board members going forward.
Any discussion? Mr. Atchison.
One of the things I think that some of us may be sitting on multiple of these tip groups and trying to coordinate. In some cases, like in Adams County, we're doing 10 elected bodies. In County and Jeffco, we're doing 7, Libby, 6 or 7. It's just gotten to be the point, especially when you've got more than one group to deal with, it's getting really tough to get scheduled for that many people in this short a time. We had some discussion on this with the executive board earlier. We don't believe there's an impact to the process by allowing some additional time to the staffs and the elected bodies, because once the staffs have gotten through with the evaluations, they still have to take it back to those sub-regional elected bodies to get approval. And some of those that may have to go back to their councils as well. So we are strongly recommending this extension to give everybody a little bit of breathing room. It has no effect on the overall outcome of what we're doing. We're still trying to make sure we have a good quality product from each of the regions, and that everybody's had sufficient time to prepare what they want to present here to the board.
Any other comments? Mr. Rex.
Thank you, sir, very much. Yeah, I think the big question is whether you want to handle it at your regular meeting on April 17th, or do you feel so inclined to come down here the week after that? It's going to be a busy April. The April 10th is our award celebration, then the 17th regular meeting, and then the possibility of one on the 24th. So it's makes for a longer night for sure, but you know, I'm here anyway.
Director Stolzman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to recommend we move the discussion to the 17th, to the regular board meeting, to give us a little bit more time in the forums to have some discussion before we submit them. And then I would like to, as a group, give the executive director some direction to put as many items on the consent agenda as he's comfortable with. And then if any members feel like there's something that shouldn't be on consent, they of course could pull it off during the meeting. But that way we could spend the major focus of the meeting that night on this major topic, which is going to take quite a lot of time.
Director Brockett.
So question, if we do follow that approach, do we then cancel the April 3rd meeting?
Yes.
And I am all for it.
Director Gutmann.
Could we also
Agree with
maybe
that.
start,
I agree with that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Szabo.
could we also maybe start a little early on that meeting?
So we only have one item for the April meeting anyway, so
Okay.
we could probably start at the same time and still probably wrap up earlier than we normally do. I'll
I
work on
mean,
that.
we did look at, check see what the scheduled items were going to be, and it's a pretty light agenda, so we felt pretty comfortable with it. It's still going to be longer than normal, but, we have a little break in between.
Any other comments or questions? Need a motion? Could we just adjust the schedule? Probably make a motion.
I move we adjust the schedule to cancel the work session in April and have the forums present their recommendations on April 17th at the regular meeting.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? That motion is approved. Thank you. Moving on to informational briefings, number 18, a briefing on the RTD's Regional Bus Rapid Transit Study. Matt Holfent? Or, okay. Krieger's going to go up there.
Thank you. I have the easy job, really just introducing the consultants, but this is an update on RTD's Regional Bus Rapid Transit Study. We were before you, or they were before you a few months ago as the study was getting started. A lot of technical work has taken place since that time. We are one of the stakeholders involved in the study, so as they've gotten further in the technical analysis and the work on the study, we wanted to give you this update of where they're at and where they're going. So with that, let me introduce RTD's consultants from Felsberg, Holt, and Oliveg, Holly Buck and Stephen Marfitano.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. So RTD started to embark on this project about a year ago, and the intent of the project was really to look throughout the regional transportation district, throughout the metro area, and identify some corridors for the bus rapid transit lines. And the idea with this is that you'd have bus rapid transit lines to support and complement your big investments that you've already made in rapid transit throughout the metro area, to help address the growing travel demand that we see out there every day on our roads, and that is certainly expected to continue to grow through the year 2040. So the idea here and the resulting product is to really look again throughout the metro area, identify the top priority bus rapid transit corridors, and then also identify some other promising corridors that may not meet the FTA, Federal Transit Administration's guidelines and their criteria for receiving funding, but do have a lot of promise to support the mobility needs of the region. So to go through this process, we developed a 4-tier process. We started with a big set of corridors throughout the entire metropolitan area on the left side. We're taking RTD and the region through this 4-tier process with the end goal in mind of identifying those top priority corridors. And we're going to step you through that. We're about just over halfway through the project, and we'll show you where we are to date and some of the work that we've done to date, keeping it at a pretty high level so that you're not here all night. So we first started out looking at that big set of corridors, and this map illustrates all the corridors that we started with. You can see we have them throughout the entire region. We looked at studies that communities had completed already where they had made a recommendation for bus rapid transit on a corridor. We looked at RTD's existing bus lines and said any bus route that has 1 million or more riders annually, that seems to have some promise for a bus rapid transit investment. Roadways that carried 40,000 vehicles or more in the year 2040, we looked at those because we thought, well, maybe we can capture a few of those people and move them onto the bus. So all of those criteria are reflected in the blue routes or the blue corridors that we're showing here. Next, we identified 7 key metrics. They're land use metrics, they're transportation metrics. To look at each of those, we looked at every little segment where every corridor ran into another corridor, if it ran into another fast track line, and we looked at those and we evaluated them for all 7 of these metrics. And we said, how many of those key land use and transportation metrics do each of those little segments meet? So you can see those that are identified in black, they didn't actually meet any of those. They didn't meet the density, they didn't meet the land use, the population. Then you look, the white ones identified included 1 key metric. They met 1 key metric, and you go down the line. Those in red met all 7 metrics that we had identified in Tier 1. But of course, when we look at routes and bus rapid transit routes, we actually have to connect from one point to another, right? So these are very disjointed segments that we came up with that met the criteria. We took all of those segments and we looked at key origins and destinations. We looked at key fast tracks connections and other connections in RTD's system that are important. And we developed these 29 routes for evaluation in Tier 2. So we've been working on this Tier 2 analysis for the last several months. We use RTD's regional travel model to help us identify where we think we can capture the most boardings and help us to understand the key criteria and the metrics here. So we took all of those 29 corridors and we evaluated them for boardings. This is the number of people that are actually getting on the bus per service mile. So this is the number of miles that the bus actually travels on its route. We also looked at passenger miles traveled per service mile. And we also looked at the percent of congested roadway. And this piece is important because while there are corridors that have a lot of potential ridership, it's going to be really difficult to capture the ridership if everybody can travel in their car faster than we can move them in the bus. So if there's a little congestion that is affecting the cars, and we can move the buses around that congestion, which is what we're trying to do with bus rapid transit, then that can help our bus line be more successful and capture more people. So this is some details on the modeling process. I won't go into all the weeds on that, but certainly if you have questions, we can help answer those. And then these are the tier 2 results. So across the x-axis here, we have the percent of that corridor that was severely congested in 2040. So again, we're looking at land use and transportation out at the year 2040. On the y-axis, we have the BRT boardings, the number of people that are getting on per revenue mile. So how long the bus is traveling and how frequently it travels. And then the size of the dot reflects the passenger miles of travel. So you can see those in the dark blue, our goal here is to have a big dot and to have it be in the far upper right-hand corner. That's what we want to get to here. Those are the ones that we think have the most potential for bus rapid transit. So up in the upper right, I mean, hopefully around the screens you can see it. The text is a little bit small, but I think it's ones you'd probably expect to see. Colorado Boulevard, Spear Leetsdale, Broadway Lincoln, Alameda, Park Avenue and 38th, Evans, Quebec, Monaco, I-25 North. That line extends up to State Highway 7. And when we went to speak with the RTD Board of Directors, the Sheridan route had not been included, but it was kind of on the edge. And so they really felt it was important that we continue to move that forward and give it a bit more evaluation. This is another way of looking at it. So the numbers represent what we do when we're looking at the evaluation metrics. We break them into quartiles. So we took the 29, broke them into fourths, and said those that have the highest, meet the highest criteria, get a number 4. So if you had the most boardings per revenue mile, you would get a 4. And then that goes for the other criteria as well. So the highest score you could possibly achieve would be a 12. The lowest score you could get would be a 3 in this case. And you can see those that are highlighted in blue are the corridors that we have, the same corridors that we had identified on the dot map. It's really just another way of looking at the data. And then here they are in a map form. So there's a lot of community outreach happening, and one of the things that we have heard, we've been holding some, RTD has local government meetings, and they've been holding those, and we've been meeting and outreaching with people. You know, it's a lot of agencies, and we want to make sure we're hearing from as many as we can. And one of the things we've heard is the need to ensure that communities that have a vested interest in moving a bus rapid transit line forward that maybe doesn't meet these federal transit administration criteria, that we still support them and help them move through that process and get BRT implemented if it's an appropriate solution in their community. So we're working on that with RTD. These are the communities that actually have a tier 3 corridor that go through the tier 3 corridor. So I think we've got, I don't know how many it is, 20 some communities that we're outreaching with to make sure that we also want to make sure that the communities are actually interested in the bus rapid transit, because if the community isn't interested, obviously that corridor will fall off, and RTD isn't going to go push that forward if there's not an interest with the community. So our next steps, we're moving into, so that was the wrapping up of the Tier 3 evaluation. We're starting on, Tier 2, we're moving into Tier 3. In Tier 3, we're looking at, not only are we looking to hear from the communities about how interested they are to make some modifications to their roadways to see if we can get the bus rapid transit line to fit in there, but we're also looking at the physical space that's available and how feasible is it for us to get some improvements in. Can we eke out another lane even for a short stretch so the bus can go around some of those queued vehicles and some of that congestion? Can we fit in some queue jumps? Is there any chance that your community is willing to and interested in repurposing a general purpose lane that would then be used for the bus? So that's where we're starting the conversations now. What's the actual feasibility of getting this on the ground? So that's what we're going to focus on in Tier 3. That will run through about April. And then moving April through July, we'll be looking at Tier 4, where we'll really do a cost-benefit analysis so we can understand how competitive the top-ranked corridors will be for federal FTA Small Starts program. And at the end, of course, we talked about this, the top priority corridors, those that appear to compete the best, will be moved forward, hopefully to move into that Small Starts process. We've identified 3 on this slide. It could be 3 to 5. We kind of have to see what the results look like. And then, again, identifying those other promising BRT corridors where we can support communities in moving some of those forward as well. I think that that is the gist of the presentation, and I would love questions if you have them.
Questions? Director Brockett.
Thanks very much for that presentation. To question for the last thing that you said about there be probably 3 that you'll move forward for the small starts, and then there's that identifying other promising ones, which is what I'm asking about, because the city and the county of Boulder and neighboring communities are looking at implementing BRT, particularly our 119, which is already in some plans, but also State Highway 7, which I see just fell off the list. So can you outline how you might dial back to work with communities like ourselves after you finish this process to identify how, for a community that's already done a lot of work, how we might move something like that forward?
Absolutely. Before I jump in, I for some reason have a mental block for this, but just for everybody's clarification, the Colfax BRT line that is currently being studied, the State Highway 119 that is being studied, and there are some funds identified for those projects. Those are included in this project, and they're in the background. So we're not reevaluating them because they're farther along in the process than this, but I want to clarify that.
I remember that from the last presentation.
From the last time.
Because I asked.
And I forgot to say it then, too, didn't I? I'm telling you, it's a mental block I have. So we are actually just in total transparency, we are working with RTD to figure out exactly what that outreach is going to look like for a corridor like State Highway 7. We think that a State Highway 7 does have a lot of potential. There's been, and there's some other corridors, that's just an example, that have had a lot of support. The communities are coming together. They have a coalition. They're identifying funding. They've moved forward with feasibility planning and studies. And so we do feel like communities that are coming together and have that much commitment to it, we need to identify ways to support them and help them move through the process. It's not likely that it will be, the ones that are falling off here are not likely to compete well in the small starts arena. So that's really what those top priority corridors are looking at. But I think there's we have a lot of mobility needs in the region, and we've got a big region to cover. So I think that we need to figure out how we create we're looking to create more of a network where we would say, here's sort of a background network, and of this entire network of frequent bus rapid transit, whatever we call it, these are the 3 to 5 that are the most likely to compete for FTA funds. And then here's how we're going to help these other corridors move forward. But that it's not well defined just yet, but we are actively working on it.
Great. I look forward to those next steps.
Good.
Director Atchison.
One of the things, Holly, thanks again. I mean, we've kind of beat this one up before when you were up at NADA. We still have this large black hole that's north of 120th where we still don't see service. As an example, the last time we were in, Bill, I know you weren't there, but I know Dave and a couple of the other reps were. We have one employer that started out at 1,500 at I-25 and roughly 130, 144th, roughly in that area. That is now growing to 4,000. There is no bus service in that part of Adams County, period. So you have an operation of one employer of that large but size that has no ability to get workers to that, and especially in an operation that's a 24/7. They're not standard work day schedules. We are beating our heads against the wall up there trying to figure out how to get transportation, multimodal, something to that in a circulator area as well. Now, we do have one bus route that runs north on Huron from 120th, but the problem is we don't have a parking lot for the people to park in. So they're going into business areas right now and parking until such time as the landowners of those areas get tired of it and they start telling them we're going to tow your cars. But we have to continue to work together with RTD and others to try to find some alternative and long-term. I know we're talking about this every month at NADA. We talk about it every month at the 36 MCC. And other groups in there are saying we have got to find a way to get service to these areas, but without people, I know Thornton is looking at going from about 150,000 to around 250,000 in the next few years. All of us up on the end are growing, but we have got to have multimodal transportation. We can't put everybody on I-25. You can't drive down I-25 from about 144th to 84th without sitting in stopped traffic. No accidents, no stalls, just pure congestion, and it's every day. But from the transportation standpoint, going back to our roadways and stuff earlier, we've got to fix mass transit. We have got to finish building the corridors, the trains, the buses, the bikes, however people are getting around, we have got to get this system built. This still has, in my opinion, some holes north of I-70 that needs to be reviewed and still fixed.
Director Jones.
I just want to follow up on Director Brockett's comments that in particular, I think it's important to figure out how we can have a map of potential BRT candidates. And I will say, I think it's great that you're doing this. I think BRT provides a really cost-effective mobility choice in a lot of places, but particularly if we're looking at increasing regional transportation funding or statewide or local transportation funding, BRT is one of the things that we could send that funding to. So it's important that whatever map you put together of potential candidate corridors includes those corridors that aren't going to compete for FTA funds, because they will be able to compete for regional funds should we decide to go forward with a transportation funding solution for the region. We want to be able to get those projects funded, get them on the RTP or whatever is necessary in order to move that forward. And I wouldn't want the map to sort of bias against the non-FTA projects. So I just want to encourage us to continue to have a map of viable BRT regardless of the funding source.
Thank you. Mr. Papsdorf.
To Director Jones, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. So because I think there's a number of things that are converging here that are important for the board to consider. So this is giving us all some really good information, teeing into the beginning of our next development of our regional transportation plan, the 2050 plan. So we'll have a 2050 horizon year plan. That process will be undertaken over the next 2 years. I think that taking this information, having a regional dialogue about sort of our vision for a larger transit and bus rapid transit network as part of that RTP development process will be really important. One of the other things that you did tonight in improving the amendments to the Unified Planning Work Program was a project that RTD is just beginning in terms of the transportation transformation process that is really taking a fresh look at their bus transit system and other transit elements. So I think all those things converging with this project are going to give us a lot of information and feed into our regional dialogue as we prepare that next regional transportation.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Great. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have committee reports. We'll start with Lisa Jones on the State Transportation Advisory Committee.
So I'm going to mention 3 or 4 things that we focused on at the January STAC meeting. Want to get an update on the Senate Bill 1 Multimodal Options Fund. You may recall that an advisory committee was formed to help figure out the distribution formula for the local priorities portion of the SB1 fund to make recommendations to the Transportation Commission. I'm on the advisory committee. We will be meeting soon, so stay tuned on that. CDOT's Aeronautics Division is working to develop an updated Colorado Aviation System Plan and economic study. The last plan was done in 2011, so it's time to update that. That will affect sort of airplane or, any local air travel that we have planned for us, so we should keep an eye on that. We reviewed and voted on a number of CDOT infra grant federal proposals. None of those were in the metro area, except that the STAC did vote to have CDOT support Adams County local application for the US 85 and 120th Avenue interchange project that they're submitting for as a local government. And then last but not least, we got an update on the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail Commission. The commission's in the process of hiring a director that can oversee the next level study for the Front Range Rail. And they're going to be doing an RFP later this year for that to help support the 15-year vision that they have for Front Range Rail. And that includes a connection of the Amtrak Southwest Chief Service from La Junta through Pueblo and Walsenburg. So those are the highlights.
Thank you. Reports from the Metro Mayor's Caucus, Director Atchison.
Just refer you back to item 5 for tonight.
Sounds good. Next up, Metro Area County Commissioners, Mr. Partridge.
Very good. We met in January, and that was our organizational and planning meeting to schedule topics for the whole year for the roughly 6-7 meetings we would have. And we really are a group to focus on education, just a mutual collaboration and looking at shared challenges and successes that we have. So our topics we discussed to report on for each individual county to report on, aerospace and economic development, mental health, we actually going to 2 meetings to that, affordable housing, open space, and we decided that our actually February 22nd meeting was supposed to be this Friday. Nobody could present for that, so we had a great discussion regarding what we see as the present issue of vehicle break-ins, thefts, and stolen vehicles. So we thought, how can we be proactive on this? We certainly have seen law enforcement, but from the standpoint of commissioners, we made a decision to go ahead and work on doing a public service announcement. We're in that process, actually, Douglas County, we're going to lead that to get all the PIOs from the individual counties to come together to put out that public service announcement that lock your car, take your valuables out, don't be a puffer, and certainly keep your garage door shut. And little things like this, just that public service announcement, because we're seeing no doubt theft, but serious property crimes that are occurring with us. So had discussion with my board and thought, we couldn't get together back as MAC, but maybe that is something that either Metro mayors or municipalities with DRCOG would consider to put out that public announcement, public service announcement. talked to some law enforcement agencies, and they're very supportive of this. A lot of them do that, but I think it'd be big, and that's what we discussed, it'd be a big impact, just the elected officials saying, lock your car, think of safety. There was even a discussion where there was garage door open, keys were not in the vehicle. The individual went into the house to find the keys. So it's serious and out there. And you said you wouldn't believe how many times garage doors are left open at night. I may leave mine open. I live on acreage though, and we have Zeus protects it. He's our 120-pound German Shepherd. So if you don't lock, maybe we'll lease out Zeus. But anyway, that's what we're looking at. So I encourage, the other municipalities or metro mayors or CML to maybe consider that too.
Is it a video that your PSA is going to be about? Is that the envision?
I don't think it'll necessarily be a video that we're going to put out, but it may just be hard copy.
I'm sure all the city's PIOs will be more than welcome.
And we'll be happy to share that RPIs, because a lot of the PIOs are very connected with each other almost on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. Next up, the Advisory Committee on Aging, Jayla Sanchez-Warren.
We had a big meeting. Every area agency on aging in the country has to do a 4-year plan on aging, and I've been working on that for the last 6 months. The advisory committee is critical in that process. So this time we talked about identifying the needs, understanding the trends, and seizing the opportunities. I reviewed with them the results of the community conversations and our key informant sessions. So we did 10 community conversations, 10 key informant sessions to understand the needs. We broke them down in service needs. I'll just briefly talk about the highlights. Number 1, transportation, shock, shock, shock. Affordable, accessible housing. Also help with home modifications. Food security. A lot of people talking about not having enough food, which is shocking still to me that we're still dealing with this. In-home services, things like house cleaning and yard work and home maintenance was a big deal, particularly in the mountain communities and the Eastern Plains. Healthcare, lots of stuff about healthcare, including mental health and affordable dental and vision and hearing and access to docs that accept Medicaid. Financial assistance with daily needs as well as medications and healthcare costs as well as emergency funds. What do you do when the water heater goes out, right, or the refrigerator goes out? And then the first time I've ever heard this, and I've been doing these since 2000, a need to have an advocate and a navigator to walk you through all of these things, the benefits, Medicare, the services, all that's out there. Oh my gosh, so confusing. Really feeling like they need that service. For social needs, a lot about activities, feeling valued, feeling like they have a voice, spiritual activities, learning opportunities, even had some people talking about part-time employment. We talked about trends and opportunities. There is money in old people, and people have figured that out in this region. We're the 3rd fastest aging state in the nation. It actually has a name. It's called the longevity economy. There's a lot of people getting into this space. Panasonic, Apple, Amazon, Best Buy. There's a ton of startups in Colorado. A ton. I'm not kidding you. Ask Flo, she knows too. Denver Startup Week was all about aging. There's a lot of technology going on and medical solutions and medical advancements, and companies looking at that. Our universities have band together. They have something called co-cares where they're really looking at the challenges of aging. There are a ton of new partners and opportunities and partners in the metro area, particularly around social determinants of health and the changes in healthcare that may present itself in Colorado. Governor Polis's desire to reduce healthcare costs, and then Medicare Advantage. There are new opportunities. We have new transportation funding. We're doing a voucher transportation program, which I'm very excited about. We have a lot more interest in, so we think there's a whole new market in Medicare Advantage. They're changing their laws so that there may be more opportunity to partner with insurance companies. Remember, our 75 and older population, that's the people that we tend to serve the most, grows by over 65% between 2014 and 2040. I doubt our federal and state funding is going to. Just because there's no money doesn't mean there's no need. And so we have got to look for other funding sources and other partners in this region to help people live as independently and as successfully as possible in our communities.
Thank you, Jayla. Next up, Regional Air Quality Council, Mr. Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there was a report out on the 4 committees of the board: Mobility Sources, Fuel Committee, Operations Committee, Station Area Sources Committee, and the Transportation Land Use and Outreach Committee. The takeaway from that is that, quite frankly, it was a dose of reality about our the air quality issues that we face over the next few years. It's almost certain that we're going to be bumped on the 2008 standard to serious after 2021, which is very disturbing. That it doesn't even account for the new standard, the 2015 standard. This is the old standard that we can't even meet. So it was a real dose of reality. The other thing we talked about is preparing for a March 1st board retreat. So there's a lot of discussion on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rex. Next up, the E470 Authority, Director Dyak.
Thank you, Chair. We had a couple things. We had an accident analysis presentation. The big takeaway is expanding the road makes it safer. We had a reduction in accidents on the expanded roadway. Kind of seems very logical. In addition, E470 is going to be buying concrete barriers. I guess there's a shortage of concrete barriers out in the Denver metro area due to the increased number of projects. It's a cost-saving move because we got 2 phases to again expand, and in about 10 to 12 years, if you're in the market for barriers to rent or to purchase, come see us. Year-end financial results, the key takeaways, we're at an A rating from a bond standpoint. About 10 years ago, we were at BBB minus. That was pretty close to junk. So due to the good financial practices of the board, at the board's direction, we've solidified our financial balance sheet. And we have 5% growth in traffic. And we are also going out to refinance a bond offering with the goal of getting to level debt in 2020.
Thank you, Director Dyak. And next up, Mr. Van Meter for Fast Tracks. No, they're never on.
They're never on. All right. Better? Yes. All right. Or maybe worse if you don't want to hear from me. But. So following up on the theme of bus rapid transit, the Flatiron Flyer, the bus rapid transit service on US 36, we just reported to our board of directors year-over-year growth in ridership of 8.5%. So 2018 ridership on that corridor was 8.5% higher than 2017. So bus rapid transit is effective and already in use in the region. That was a Fast Tracks funded project. A couple other quick updates on Fast Tracks projects. Earlier this month, we received approval from the Federal Railroad Administration to start revenue service demonstration on the G line to Wheat Ridge, Arvada, Adams County. Yes. Revenue service demonstration from the Federal Railroad Administration. Testing.
I'll believe it when I step on it.
One of many steps required to get to G-line opening, but a key one. And they also granted us the, added the G-line to the same long-term waiver that the University of Colorado A-line and the B-line are operating under. It's progress. It is good progress.
It's progress.
And we're working well on quiet zones, which leads me to the announcement that RTD, in cooperation with the City and County of Denver and Mayor Hancock, were able to also make earlier this month, which is that as of March 1st on the University of Colorado A-line, quiet zones in Denver will go into effect. anticipate that at the 2 additional grade crossings in Aurora, that ought to be able to follow fairly soon after. We don't have a firm timetable for that yet. But that means a lot more peaceful nights for a lot of residents, businesses, and other folks along the corridor. And the final update that I have is that we did announce the Southeast Rail Extension opening is scheduled for May 19th. That's a Sunday, May 19th, and there will be some festivities and celebrations around that. I probably would be remiss if I weren't also to add that the N line construction is making great progress, and testing and trains will start up in the coming weeks and months on that, leading toward what we anticipate. Where's wood? I need to knock on some wood, and opening in the early part of, well, in 2020. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Van Meter. I had a lot of jokes to go with everything you said, but
I was setting myself up, I know.
if you haven't seen them around town, we do have bumper stickers that says Arvada's horny, because that's all we hear are horns. So moving right along, informational items 20 through 22, please take a look at those on your leisure. Real quickly, next workshop, I do want to highlight a few things. On March 6th, we'll be reviewing the mobility choice blueprint presentation and discussion, as well as the MetroVision amendments. So please attend. I think it's important for you to be at that workshop. And then obviously the next business meeting is March 20th. Any other matters by members? Seeing none, whoa.
So the presentations that each city does, is there a way that, are they being archived? Can we look at them? Yeah,
That's a great question.
I think you should, if you're not.
I don't know if anybody knows if we have those, the ones that we have them all. So we can create a page on our website
Oh,
for
please
those.
do, so that other people
Right,
can
Steve?
take a look at them. Because I'd like to maybe share them.
Oh, appreciate that. We'll do so.
I think Steve just posted them all, so I think we're good. All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you.